wish I knew how to quit eating bugs.
This seems so weird.
There's no place like home.
I'm gonna make him an offer down with you.
And welcome to another episode of Gone with the Wind. This is going to be a relatively shorter episode today. We actually don't have a lot to talk about, but we've got the Ace Eddies Awards that came out recently, and then we're going to talk about some Sundance movies. And we've got a bunch of great guests here. We've got Dan. Dan, how are you going?
I'm doing good. I completely forgot we're doing this today, so that's my fault. That Malcolm woke me up today, and now I'm here.
And also here we've got Sean. Sean, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's good. But yeah, let's start off by talking about the Ace Eddie Awards that sort of come out. I'm not used to having the Oscar nominations out before these, so it's definitely interesting. But what them talk about, and so for best edited feature film for drama slash theatrical, got All Quiet on the Western Front, Elvis, Tar, Top Gun Maverick, and The Woman King. Dan, what are your thoughts about best edited feature film for drama?
I'll tell you what, this is weird. Tar keeps getting in places for editing, and I don't understand the editing out of. Maybe it's just the crowd, the very back and forth from when they're sitting there at the movie. I know you finally saw Tar, Malcolm. But Tar doesn't seem like it's that great of a. But Elvis, these are the ones that kind of. I definitely think Elvis and Top Gun Maverick are the front runners here with this award because they're also in the Oscars. But
So
I
is
think,
Tar.
yeah, I know this. I just don't understand why Tar's in there or in here. I just don't understand why Tar's in there. But. Don't interrupt me, Sean. Let me talk now. I'll let you talk in a minute. This is obviously Top Gun Maverick to me. I mean, this is if that doesn't win editing at the Oscars and here, Malcolm, I'd be completely shocked. But I really enjoy the editing in Elvis because of the especially. I've talked about this a couple times, Malcolm, so I'm starting to sound like a broken record. But like the scene where he's on stage at the beginning and he's singing, and you go to the crowd and the people start dancing, and then you go back and they start like gyrating. That to me is one of the better edited scenes of the year. And as a whole, I really like Elvis as a whole. But this is Top Gun Maverick. I mean, I'd be shocked if Top Gun Maverick didn't win this. All right, now, Sean, what do you think?
See, I don't like Tar as a whole. I don't love the movie. I think the first third is really good, and then the rest just kind of bored me. But I do think it's a really exceptionally edited film. I'm kind of happy to see it getting represented in these editing categories because if you think about, like, for example, the first time when the orchestra sets in where she does this scene, like that is a phenomenally edited sequence. Like the editing just as a whole is really good. Like even the conclusion with like a little bit of spoilers, but kind of like when she goes out onto the stage to do the last big performance and then it cuts to the audience, kind of like pans over a little bit and then it cuts and you see it's the Demon Slayer, like live orchestra rendition. I think the editing in that movie is really good. Do I think it's going to win? Probably not. I do think it's, interesting to see. I believe that Tar is the only film nominated either for the Eddies or for the Oscar that's edited by a woman. So I think that, obviously that's something that needs to change. There needs to be more female representation. I do think that this is Elvis's award though. Both for the Eddies and for the Oscars, because they tend to go with the flashier editing. Like you mentioned that scene in Elvis where he's like thrusting his hips. That type of editing is the type of editing that they tend to go for at the Oscars, like Bohemian Rhapsody, for example. It was a very flashy editing. Usually, like the rule of thumb for the tech categories like this is that it goes to a war movie or a musical, if those are an option. And so you got Top Gun Maverick versus Elvis. I think that in this case, it's going to go to Elvis, though. It's the showier of the two films. And I think that the showiness is going to win out.
Wow. Malcolm?
Yeah, I mean, like, all these, period, like, yeah, just like, I've said, I think I've said this once before, but quite often when it comes to, like, some movies have, some more subtle editing sort of things that kind of make them stand out a little bit, like, and I think Tar is one of those. Like, it doesn't need to be all that flashy edited and all that, but like, but I'm kind of with Sean on the movie. Like, I kind of enjoyed a little parts of it, but all in all, the movie just kind of bored me as a whole. But it's just one of those ones. But I do think the editing is really good in it.
All right.
But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting because this is one of those ones where the Ace Eddie could go one way, Oscar could go a different way. So it's but moving on to best edited feature film for comedy. We've got Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery, The Menu and Triangle of Sadness. Sean, what are your thoughts about the edited features for comedy?
I mean, the obvious choice here is going to be Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's the one that's probably going to win. It's the one that probably should win. I mean, you're not going to beat a film with editing this year. I wish that Everything Everywhere All at Once would win at the Oscars because I do think it is the most ambitiously edited one. I do think they're going to go with Elvis instead, though. But personally, I wouldn't. I kind of also want to root for the underdog in this category. I'm going to say Triangle of Sadness has some really fantastic editing that I would love to see win because, like, especially during like the third act of it where they're on the island, there's some really phenomenal editing, especially that last sequence where you're cutting between the three groups of people on the island. You have the Indian Vulcan lady who had the stroke, you have Harris Dickinson running through the woods, and you have Charles B. Dean and Dolly D. Leon kind of finding the resort. The cutting between those three sequences, I think, is really masterful. And it's got the best needle drop of the year with the ending needle drop and with Harris Dickinson running through the forest. I just think it's a really fantastically edited film. And I hope that they recognize that, even though I do think it's going to go to Everything Everywhere, which is, like I said, deserves it. It's great editing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, just like you, I think Everything Everywhere is probably the front runner here. And honestly, I would like to see it win at the Oscars because I think if it's, and I think it's one of those ones. I think if it's one of those big things that people always say, like, if it's going to win Best Picture, it has to win Best Editing or something like that. Which is not always the case. I know, but I know there's a lot of people that do tend to say that. But that being said, I'm going to shout out the Menu here because I think the editing in the Menu is really good, especially when they're cutting in between, like, and timing the music to stop every time Ray Fiennes claps his hands and all that. It's just really good, and that's probably one that I kind of wish was nominated at the Oscars personally, but it is what it is. But Dan, what are your thoughts about Best Edited for comedy?
Yeah, I'm going to go to a different film. I mean, obviously, Everything Everywhere All at Once seems like the slam dunk in this category, but I'm going to go to a different film that I thought was very well edited, and that was Glass Onion: A Knives Out Mystery. I think the way that movie starts, and then you cut in the middle, and then you go to this second, like, this other story of this character, and the way that edits and ties into the rest of the movie, I thought was very well done. I really love the editing in Glass Onion, Knives Out story. But this is Everything Everywhere All at Once's trophy to win here, and I think it's got a good chance. It's in the five for Oscar, right, Malcolm?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
Going to about the Best Edited Animated Feature Film, which is The Bad Guys, Pinocchio, Marcel Shell Shoes On, Puss in Boots: Last Wish, Turning Red. I mean, like, these are pretty much the standard five. Like, it's just like the four of them are nominated at the Oscars. bad guys is just there. But I think the editing and the ones I've seen anyway, I've still got to see Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and Marcel, but Pinocchio and Turner Red, I think the editing is just really good at it. But yeah, Dan, what are your thoughts about the best edited animated feature film?
I actually like the editing in The Bad Guys because there's some really cool sequences in that movie, like car chases and some stuff like that going on. That's kind of fun if you're paying attention to it. It's actually very good editing. So I'm glad to see The Bad Guys get in here. But I think it's going to be one of the stop motions. More than likely, it's going to be Pinocchio. I mean, Marcel, that's a lot of editing, but Pinocchio's got a lot of editing in there. So yeah, you definitely. I mean, some of these are starting to track the way of the Oscars. It's kind of weird that this didn't come out before the Oscars, like you said earlier.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always one of those things. Because usually, like the Ace Eddies, and the WGA, normally they come out before the Oscars. It's the opposite this time around. But Sean, what are your thoughts about best edited animated feature film?
Yeah, like Dan, I do think that this is Pinocchio is probably going to win it. The one I'd like to see win it is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I think that in terms of pure technicality, I think that Puss in Boots is the most impressively animated movie of last year. I think my favorite of the 5 is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, but I do think that Puss in Boots has the best animation and the best edited animation. There are some sequences in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish that are just breathtaking, genuinely so. And I don't think that there's anything in any of the other movies that struck me that way. So personally, I would love to see it be Puss in Boots, but I do think it's going to go to Pinocchio, which, like you mentioned earlier with, I forget which one it is, but it's one of the quieter editing movies where the editing kind of becomes invisible versus like Puss in Boots is flashier. But I do think that they're going to go with quieter on this one.
And moving on to the last one that I will talk about here, they've got a whole bunch of other categories at the ACDs, but I'm just focusing on the 4 main film ones. And we've got Best Edited Documentary, got All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, Fire of Love, Goodnight Oppie, Moon Age Daydream, and Navalny. But Sean, what are your thoughts about the nominees for Best Edited Documentary?
See, this is one that I feel like could honestly go any direction. I think all 5 of these are pretty fantastic. And I think that there is a good argument for all of them to win. My personal favorite is All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which is my favorite because it kind of weaves 2 completely different narratives together in a way that's just incredibly seamless. It's both, a biographical documentary about Nan Goldin as this photographer in the counterculture movement in New York in the 60s and 70s. And then it's also about her as a modern day activist today fighting the Sackler family, who is the family that's behind the OxyContin and opioid epidemic. And it kind of, it's just woven together so incredibly seamlessly. And I think that that's really fantastic. Fire of Love is a fantastically edited documentary because it's basically a romantic comedy with archive footage of volcanoes. And I think it's a really innovative use of the footage. Goodnight Oppie is really compelling, and it's, this blend of fly on the wall footage of the scientists and the astronauts in these gorgeous animated sequences that represent what's happening with this rover on Mars. Moon Age Daydream is an amazing feat of editing in terms of a concert film. And Navalny is kind of done in a way where it feels like a real life thriller. And it's just shot in a way that's really captivating. I personally think that of the 5, like I said, my favorite is All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. I think the one that's going to win is probably Moon Age Daydream, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Navalny take it, if only because of the relevance of what's happening right now in Russia and the Ukraine. I could see them, going that direction because of its timeliness and importance.
But yeah, I'm not a big documentary actually personally I haven't seen any of these myself. So, but I did have to do some quick googling because I only just realised that the editor for Navalny is also named Mayor Hawk, so I had to make sure that it wasn't the same actress Mayor Hawk.
No, it's not even Hawk's daughter. It's a different person.
But Dan, what are your thoughts about the nominees for Best Edited Documentary?
Yeah, I've seen all these as well, and not to reiterate what Sean is saying, but I absolutely agree with what he's saying, especially about all the beauty and the bloodshed. It weaves together two stories seamlessly, and when you're talking about editing, that is some amazing editing. And then the good night. I mean, I would love to have seen these five be the five that got nominated for the Oscar. These five were the five that should have probably been nominated for documentary. I don't know, House Made of Splinters. I haven't seen it. I
haven't seen that one yet either.
I'd love to see it because obviously it resonated with somebody. But Fire of Love once again is another one. Is this you just can't, and it's on Disney Plus, Malcolm, and I can't say enough about that. But Goodnight Oppie, wow, they go back and forth, and they're like, the way they are like making sure the thing goes in the right direction. When it stops working, you see him back in the shop trying to figure out why it stopped and all this stuff. Then it was only supposed to go so many days, and it went forever and ever and ever. It was really interesting. Goodnight Oppie. I really loved how that movie transpired. But all the beauty in you want to talk about some amazing editing. That movie was really edited fantastic. I think it's going to win this award, and it's going to go on and win the Oscar for Best Documentary.
I hope you're right about the Oscar because it deserves the Oscar. But I honestly, this is a rare category that I would not be upset with any of the five winning. If any of the five won, I would be happy because all five of them technically deserve this award.
No, I agree. I meant to say something about Navalny, and I'm glad you brought that up. Navalny is happening, Malcolm, in real time. That is a documentary that's happening in real. So the editing is all people on the phone. I mean, they're calling each other up, and then this is happening, and then he's in the hospital. I mean, it's just real-time editing. So that is some really impressive editing, considering that's all real-time when it's going on at the time when they're making the movie. They didn't expect to be all this stuff happen in Navalny, Malcolm. This all came out of nowhere. They're following this guy around, and then he gets poisoned, and then they freaking find out who's poisoning him by making phone calls and calling up. It's fascinating stuff, Malcolm. You should definitely see Navalny.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the ACT. That's it is. But they're going to move on to Sundance. If we want to be talking about Sundance, there wasn't really much else other that award show that to talk about. So I thought, well, we'll bring in Sean. We'll do Sundance, and so I've really got nothing to.
Malcolm, have you got a list of winners from Sundance, like or Sean? Either
I
one
can
of
pull
you?
up.
Yeah, could somebody pull up the list of winners so then we can reference it to what Sean and I are talking about, just in case anybody's listening and are interested in that?
I mean, I can bring that up.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm obviously the main Sundance guy here. I did 72 movies at the festival, which I want to say is probably more than anybody else that's not on the programming team. Obviously, the programmers saw more than me, but I have a hard time believing that anyone else saw 72 movies, and most of them were very good. I had a good time with, I'd say, a solid 80% of the movies. I don't think as a whole it's as strong as some of the lineups we've had in years past, but it was very consistently good. The only movie that I really didn't care for was Run Rabbit Run, which is an Australian horror film with Sarah Snook. And it was one of the first acquisitions of the festival, actually. Netflix bought it right before it premiered. And then when it premiered, everybody hated it. So I'm kind of wondering if they regret that purchase now. But, you live, you learn. And then my favorite movie at the festival is
Give us, Sean, real quick here. Give us, since you saw so many, Malcolm, I'm going to call an audible here. Since you saw so many, Sean, we're going to kind of give the stage over to you. Give us 10. Give us your top 10 Sundance film, and then give us 5 that you don't recommend that you saw, unless you want to give more than that.
I don't want to give too many that I don't recommend.
Okay. Well, 5 is good then?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't even want to give a full 5. Just because the purpose of a film festival is to kind of launch movies that don't have distribution. And I don't want to, badmouth anything that doesn't have distribution. The only reason I'm good with saying Run Rabbit Run is terrible is because it was already bought. So it's not going to lose money by me saying it's terrible. But in terms of my favorite movies, one of my favorites is a movie that already played at TIFF in Venice last year. It's called Other People's Children. It's Virginia Efira, who was in Benedetta. She plays, a 30-something woman who's trying to find love and family, and she falls in love with a single father. And it's kind of that relationship. It's really fantastic. My number 2 was still a Michael J. Fox movie, which is a documentary about Michael J. Fox and his battle with Parkinson's. And it kind of blends, talking head interviews with Michael J. Fox with like reenactments from his career and footage from his movies that's used to tell his story. So it's not just like clips of his movie inserted to show he was in the movie, but it's actually using like the movies he was in to construct the narrative of him having Parkinson's.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Which that's really fantastic. That one's coming out on Apple TV Plus later this year. Number 3 is a movie without distribution called Drift. It's Anthony Chen, who is a very acclaimed a very acclaimed director. He's from Singapore, and he's been shortlisted for the Oscars a couple times, I believe, for international feature. This one's got Cynthia Erivo and Aaliyah Shawkat, and it's about a refugee who goes to a Greek island and befriends like an American tour guide who's living on the Greek island. And it's kind of the friendship between the two of them. It's a very tender film, very quiet film, but very powerful. Number 4 is Theater Camp, which was one of the other big acquisitions of the festival. It's Molly Gordon's directorial debut, along with her boyfriend partner, also directed it, and it stars her, Ben Platt, and a couple other big people. It's a really funny mockumentary in the style of Christopher Guest. It was bought by Searchlight, and it's going to be released theatrically later this year. Number 5 is a movie called Shada, which is an Australian film about an Iranian immigrant in Australia. And it's the lead actress is Zara Mira Ebrahimi, who was in Holy Spider. I did not like Holy Spider very much, but I liked her in it. And I think she is absolutely fantastic in this movie. It's really emotional, really powerful, and it's just all around very good. Number 6 is Fancy Dance, which is a new documentary starring an actress that Dan definitely has his eye on, Lily Gladstone, who, as I'm sure Dan is aware, is going to be starring in Killers of the Flower Moon later this year. Fancy Dance is about the missing and murdered Indigenous women issue epidemic that's going on. It's about, a woman and her niece who go to find their sister/mother who has gone missing. It's a really powerful family drama mixed with some elements of crime drama. It's both an entertaining film and a very powerful, timely film. And I think it balances those two elements well. It's actually playing at South by Southwest in March in the festival favorite section. It hasn't gotten distribution yet, but I'm sure it will get distribution soon because it is that good. Number 7 is a Lithuanian film called Slow, which is a movie about a relationship between a woman and an asexual man. It's really tender romance. It's it's a romance that's not melodramatic, which a lot of these festival romances you see are very melodramatic films, and this one's just quiet, and it's really good, really intimate without the sexuality, obviously, and it's just a really awesome movie. Number 8 is a documentary that you're going to want to keep a note for because it's going to win documentary next year, and that is 20 Days in Mariupol, which is a documentary about the Ukrainian or the Russian siege of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. And it was shot and directed by an Associated Press journalist who got stuck in Mariupol as the Russian army was descending on the city for about 20 days. It is harrowing. It is the most devastating documentary I've seen in years. Obviously, it's got that timeliness factor where it's, this conflict is still happening, and it's really eye-opening. It's footage that we've seen in some ways, and then there's a lot of footage that we hadn't seen that we have no idea how bad this is until you see this documentary. It's disgustingly hard to watch. Like, there's some blood,
dead bodies
images.
You're seeing characters walk by like dead bodies of people in the documentary, right?
People being treated in the hospital that have really horrible, really graphic wounds. And it's hard to stomach, but it's very important to stomach because the world needs to know what's happening in this situation. So I think that's important. Number 9 is a film called Rotting in the Sun that no one is ever going to get to see ever because it is so weird. It is so sexual. There is more male full frontal nudity in this movie than I have ever seen in any movie in my life, I think. But it's really funny. It's really demented. It's got the influencer Jordan Firstman as the lead actor in it, and it's directed by Sebastian Silva, who's a filmmaker who's known for pushing the envelope. And it's kind of like a work of metafiction where Sebastian Silva is playing himself and he goes missing, and Jordan Firstman is investigating his disappearance. But it's very dark comedy, and I really loved it. But like I said, it's going to be hard to market and release that one because of how boundary pushing it is. And then finally, 10th is another documentary that I think is going to be nominated for the Oscar next year. It's called Beyond Utopia. It's a documentary about refugees from North Korea who are being smuggled into South Korea. And it's kind of the story about the smugglers. I think it's a very thrilling documentary in a way that it keeps you on the edge of your seat. I do think it's a little unfocused at times because there are some subplots that don't quite have as much development as I would like. But I do think that, those 2 documentaries, 20 Days in Mariupol and Beyond Utopia, are going to end up in the 5 for next year because both of them are really exceptional documentaries, and I don't see the Oscars snubbing them with how timely they are.
How about the Michael J. Fox one? Do you think that's got a shot at it?
I think Michael J. Fox documentary is my favorite of the 3. I don't think it'll be in the Oscar consideration just because it might, because, Hollywood loves Hollywood, and it is a Hollywood movie, but I think it's kind of in the same category as like Won't You Be My Neighbor, where it's kind of like a feel-good documentary. And I don't think that the Academy usually nominates those feel-good documentaries as often as they do like the urgent kind of devastating documentaries like Mariupol or Beyond Utopia.
Yeah.
I would love to see it get nominated because I do think it's one of the more innovative documentaries I've seen, but I don't think it'll make the cut. Of the movies that I nominated in my top, or I noticed in my top 10, the ones that I could see being nominated are, like I said, the 2 documentaries. I could see Slow, if Lithuania submits it for their international feature, I could see that being an international feature. I don't know if Shada would qualify for international feature. I think it's about 75% in, I think it's either Arabic or Farsi. I'm not sure which language it is. But it's one of the Middle Eastern languages. But it's like, that one's a little iffy. But if it does qualify, it definitely could. And then Other People's Children, if France chooses to submit that, it could. But I don't know about like the eligibility because I think it might have already been released in France. So I don't think it's going to be able to be submitted this year. But yeah, I think the 2 documentaries are the main movies that people are going to want to keep their eye on come next year's Oscar season.
Malcolm, do you want me to talk about the ones that I saw?
Yeah, go ahead.
I saw six Sundance films. I'm not gonna have. I don't have them in any order of best to worst or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm just gonna talk them. Rye Lane. It's about this couple that meet at this dance. Well, they're not really a couple. They're actually one guy's in the bathroom crying, and a girl walks into the bathroom, and it's a multi-sex bathroom. Men and women can go in there, and in England, and they're both having kind of coming off of breakups, and they kind of, it's an art show. They're walking around in an art show, and they kind of start talking to each other, and they just go on a walk in this section of London. It's a section of London in Brixton, and oh god, and it's like a street where it's got all these shops, but it's like island. It's island people, like Bahamian people, Jamaican people, these types of people that live in this section of East London, and they just kind of go walking around malls and go eat at shops and go look at clothes, and they just kind of, and then they end up meeting up the next day as well. But they end up buying a burrito, and there's somebody that's selling them a burrito that you're going to recognize. I'm not going to spoil it because I want you to see the movie. And very, very sweet, romantic movie with people that I never seen before in anything. But I like seeing new people in something that I haven't seen. But the direction is fantastic. It's just, cinematography is gorgeous. Just vibrant colors all over the place. But it's the real winner for me is the location of Rye Lane. I mean, if I ever go to England, I'm going to want to go to Rye Lane. I want to go there, and I want to go to these shops, and I want to go to these little restaurants and stuff, because that just jumped out at me as just what a cool place, you know. And
Yeah.
But it's going to be also on Searchlight. It's picked up by Searchlight, and it's going to be on Hulu in March. I believe March 31st, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so
I agree. It's a really good movie. Really good movie. I like that one a lot. The actor is I forget his name, but he's from Industry, the show on HBO.
David Johnson.
Yes.
David Johnson.
He is from Industry on HBO, which the first season of Industry was good, but the second season of Industry is like one of the best seasons of television I've seen in years. So I think that, you know, he's blowing up. I think this movie is going to make him blow up, hopefully, because he's a very talented actor. And I hope that this movie allows him to be discovered.
And the girl's name is Vivian something.
Vivian Oprah, I think, is her name.
Oprah, that's right. Vivian Oprah is the other girl that's in the movie. They're both fantastic in the movie, Malcolm. It'll be on Hulu. I don't know if you got Hulu over in New Zealand or not, but anybody watching this, if you keep an eye on Rye Lane. Another one that I saw, a horror movie with two mega stars. Well, they had a really good last couple of years. Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth. Skarsgård obviously was in Passing and The Northman over the last year or two. And then Mia Goth, everybody knows her from X and Pearl. You really should do a triple feature of X, Pearl, and Infinity Pool with Mia Goth. I mean, she just goes in so many different directions with these three roles. But Infinity Pool, Alexander Skarsgård is an author who's taking
spoil it.
Huh?
Don't talk about the plot.
No, he's an author who takes a vacation.
Yeah, but let people go into. Okay. Because I'm like, let people go into the story blind.
No, I'm not going to spoil. Oh, I'm not. No, I'm not going to spoil.
Dan, I think you're cutting.
Hold on, everybody's back. Okay, good. No, I had a lag. All right, so Alexander Skarsgård is an author with his girlfriend. They're on a little bit of a vacation in Eastern Europe. I keep cutting out on you, guys. I apologize. Uh, uh, and then they meet some people on the resort vacationing with them. And so, needless to say, something bad happens and some things happen. So it gets into some really horrific elements because it is a horror movie. It's from Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg, and he had a movie out a couple years ago called Possessor, with, ironically enough, Andrea Riseborough in it. This is Malcolm. I can't not recommend this movie. I recommend this movie because it's just one of those movies that once you start watching it, you can't stop watching. You can't take your eyes off of Mia Goth in this movie. You're seeing Alexander Skarsgård in positions and things that you're like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing with Alexander Skarsgård?
I will say I got to see the NC-17 version of the movie, which you only saw the R-rated version of the movie.
Our version, yeah.
So the stuff that I saw Alexander Skarsgård do is even worse. I mean, or better, depending on your take on it. It's up to you. You know, we don't shame here. But it is we got to see Alex some pretty graphic stuff from Skarsgård in the NC-17 version.
But you still can't take your eyes off of Mia Goth. I don't know what it is about Mia Goth in this movie, but in general, you're like zoned in on her the whole time. You're like wondering what she's thinking, what she's doing at every second in this movie. Another one, Malcolm, that I saw is called The Amazing Maurice. Now, Amazing Maurice is based on a children's book from Terry Pratchett called The Amazing Maurice and the Educated Rodents. And when you hear that, educated rodents, all these anamorphic animals talk. The cat, Maurice is a cat, and he has a bunch of friends that are rats. And then there's people, and the people talk. So you have all these animals that interact with people, and you have an amazing cast of actors. Hugh Laurie plays Maurice. You have Hugh Bonneville, who plays the mayor. You have Amelia Clark, who plays the narrator. Her character is the narrator, but she's actually in the story as well. You have David Tennant. You have David Thewlis, who plays the boss. That's all I'm going to say about him. He's the boss. But it's a who's who of British actors, character actors. You're like, holy crap, look at this cast of people. But I love the animation. The only thing about this is there's like 3 or 4 different subplots going on at the same time. And it kind of weaves in these subplots and you kind of get lost a little bit in the subplots. But I think overall, it's a good movie. It's a fun movie. And I think it's going to be coming out. I don't know. It
came out in the U.S.
Huh?
It was this weekend in the U.S.
It came out this weekend in theaters in the U.S., Malcolm. So I don't know if New Zealand's going to get the Amazing.
It came out last year for New Zealand.
See, I was wondering about that.
It came out in the UK last year. It was on Sky in the UK. And to me, my thing about The Amazing Maurice is that it felt like a TV animated movie just with an A-list cast. It's my other thing is that it's way too dark in sections. Like there are a lot of parts that feel like it's too kiddie for too kiddie for middle schoolers in several parts, but it's too dark for elementary schoolers in certain parts. Like there is one subplot about a cannibalistic Pied Piper played by Rob Brydon that is kind of messed up for a movie that otherwise is largely aimed at kids in the ages of 5 to 7. So I think that the big issue with this movie is that it just doesn't know who it's for. And I think that that's the only thing that really holds it back from, greatness. Because like Dan said, the animation's solid. It's not spectacular, but it's solid. And the cast is fantastic. I think that the movie doesn't know who it's for.
Yeah. Malcolm, did you see that yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Another one I have here is The Starling Girl. And I don't know what New Zealand is when it comes to fundamentalist Christians over there, Malcolm. I don't know if you deal with that type of thing over there. but we have a lot of kind of like fundamentalist Christian groups and subsections of religion over here in the United States. And the Starling Girl is about a girl who's part of a fundamentalist Christian group, but she kind of wants to branch out and do some other things. And she meets a youth pastor who's also in Top Gun Maverick. What's his name again?
Louis Pullman.
Louis
He's
Pullman.
the son of Bill Pullman, who's
The son
like
of Bill Pullman.
president of Independence Day.
Yeah, he's a youth pastor, and she kind of gets in a relationship with him, but he's a little bit older than her, and she's a teenager, he's an adult, and of course this messes things up with regarding the whole fundamentalist Christian and the beliefs of the pastor and the parents of the girl. But it really is an eye-opener of these type of groups that exist. And this took place in Kentucky, and I recommend seeing it, but it's not the easiest movie. It's not the most accessible type of movie because of some of the subject matter that are in there. But I did like it, and I liked the main girl, Eliza
Scanlon.
Scanlon. She was very good. And you're not even going to recommend Pullman. I mean, recognize Pullman. He looks completely different than he does in Top Gun Maverick in this. So, it's got a good little cast of character actors. But yeah, the Starling Girl.
I was mixed on the Starling Girl. There are some things I really liked about it, like the acting and the cinematography. The story didn't really do it for me. It felt a little bit conventional. But as a whole, I'm more positive on it than I was negative.
Yeah, same here. Another one is Shortcomings from Randall Park. Randall Park, we all know he's Agent Jimmy Woo in Ant-Man and the Wasp and WandaVision. And also Parks and Recreation. No. Fresh off the boat. Fresh off the boat. See, I caught myself.
And Young Rock.
And Young Rock. That's right. This is his directorial debut. It's based on a graphic novel, and it's about a guy who works at a movie theater, but he has a girlfriend, and he has a kind of a best friend, and they're both girls or women, I would say. And the girlfriend decides she wants to leave and go to New York and take a break from the relationship. And then the girlfriend does the same. I mean, the friend, which he confides, he kind of tells all his secrets to and everything in his life. She decides she's going to go to New York. So he's kind of left in LA by himself. And then his movie theater closes and he ends up going to New York. But this guy isn't necessarily the most likable guy. But I like the fact that this movie talks about it, and it's obviously based on the graphic novel. So, but these seem like real people to me. And it's an Asian movie. It's got an Asian cast. And they seem like this is the kind of thing where people are like, I like movies that deal with like the people that are normal. Look, they might be not that nice of people, but they're kind of normal, everyday people where it's not like, oh, let's make them this way or make them that way. These people seem grounded and realistic. And this whole world around this guy, and his name was Justin Ming, and he was also in last year's After Yang. He was Yang and After Yang, but he's really good in this as not the nicest likable guy. But actually, I thought this was a good movie because it showed that you could be normal and you could just be like normal people, and there could be people that aren't likable people in the world, and you could follow them around and stuff. So I was a lot of folks didn't like this as much as I did because the comedy was a little bit hit or miss. It's supposed to be a romantic comedy, but the comedy is kind of a little bit hit or miss in here. But
see, I actually disagree. I thought that the comedy was the better part of it. I thought it was very funny. I was laughing consistently throughout the movie, and I liked that the character was unlikable. I just think that the movie thinks it's smarter than it is. It's one of those where like there is some insight in it, but it asks more questions than it really engages with them. It's one of those movies that everything is just like, hey, let's talk about this issue. And then it doesn't really talk about it. It just says it's an issue, which is like these issues are truly issues. I just wish it would have engaged a little bit more with them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the last one that I saw, Malcolm, was called All Dirt Roads Taste of Salt. Now, there are these kinds of movies, Malcolm, where you have a camera and the camera is kind of following things. You don't have a lot of dialogue. You're viewing these things through the camera. Remember that movie about 15 years ago? It's called Tree of Life, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Where you kind of see the world that is going on the other side of the camera, but you don't. Sometimes some of the stuff you don't really know. Well, that's what this movie was. It was about these people. Starts out they're two girls, and you see them grow up from little girls to adults, but then you also see people in their neighborhood, people that they know, and it's about women and nurturing children and being a mother, and all the people in the movie are African American, black, and but it's kind of a southern looking take on nurturing and mothering, and then you got beautiful cinematography of the world that they exist in, like the trees and there's like streams, and this is not going to be for everybody. It's kind of one of those low key kind of movies, but it's got some names in it in the cast. She was in The Woman King. Alice, what's her name? She was in The Woman King. I forget her name.
I do know that the lead actress, or like the
and then the
main supporting actress is Sheila Ateen, who was in
The Woman King,
The Underground Railroad.
And
she was also in The Woman King. I don't remember her being in The Woman King, but I believe you.
And then the other girl from Obi-Wan Kenobi's in it.
Moses
Ingram's in it. So those are some people that you would know that are in the movie. There's just not a lot of dialogue, Malcolm, and it's going to be hard for people to gravitate towards this because of the style, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's very gorgeous. One of the best shot movies at Sundance. It just didn't do much for me on a narrative or thematic level. I liked it as a whole because it's got great vibes. But like I said, as a whole, it left me wanting more.
Now, Sean, Malcolm, real quick, I know you're going to go down some of the winners and stuff. Could you do me a favor here and pick an actor or an actress or both? It may be in one of the movies you saw, or a movie you didn't see, or nothing on something that's not on your top 10. When you watched all these movies, what is a couple great performances that just stood out in a couple movies for you, men and women?
Yeah. So for men, there were two that really stood up to me. One of them is Hieptran Nagia, and I probably kind of butchered his name, but it's the lead actor from The Accidental Getaway Driver, which is a movie. It won Best Directing. The movie itself as a whole is fine. It's like a 3.5 out of 5 movie. But he is just exceptional in it. I think he's like an 80-year-old man, and he gives one of the most tender performances that I saw out of anyone at Sundance. And I think that it's not a performance that's going to get Oscars or anything like that. But maybe like an indie spirit or something like that could go his way. In terms of Oscar-like performances, Gael Garcia Bernal was in the biopic Cassandro about the luchador, and he's really great in it. He's fantastic. It's a biopic performance, so he's doing kind of like an impression in a way, but he does bring the emotion to it that really stands out. And then in terms of actresses, it's going to be the people that I kind of already mentioned. Zara Miller-Abrahami from Shada, Virginie Fira from Other People's Children, and Cynthia Erivo from Drift. Those three are really my top 3 out of the festival in terms of actress performances. I don't think any of them have, realistic awards chances because 2 of them are in kind of like foreign language movies, and a lot of performances from foreign language movies don't get in. And then Erivo's performance in Drift is very quiet and not showy at all. So I do think that that's something that the Oscars are not going to pay attention to really, but I do think all 3 performances are fantastic.
Now, real quick, Malcolm, the 2 that have been getting a lot of buzz is the director of Once and Sing Street, John Carney, his movie, in the woman in that plays the mother, and
Yep.
also Jonathan Majors in Magazine Dreams. What do you think those two the shot for them two is possibly not Oscar nominations?
I didn't get to see Florence Son, so I don't feel right judging that.
Okay.
There were only 5 movies that were not available to press who weren't in person in Park City, and that was one of them. That was one of the 5 I didn't get to see, or I wasn't allowed to see.
Okay.
And then in terms of Jonathan Majors, I think his performance is fantastic. I think the movie is terrible, though. I did not like the movie very much at all. His performance is very good. It's a very weird performance. We've seen weird performances get nominated at the Oscars before. We've seen weird performances win at the Oscars before. We had Joaquin Phoenix win for Joker. And I would say that this is a similar performance to Joaquin Phoenix in Joker. I like it better than Joaquin Phoenix and Joker. I don't like Joaquin Phoenix and Joker. I do like Jonathan Majors in this movie.
He's having a big year? He's going to have a big year this year.
Jonathan Majors is going to have a big year this year. He had a big year last year. He's going to have a big year this year. Do I think that he would get nominated? Possibly. I could see him in a 3, 4, 5 spot. He's not going to win the Oscar. I think somebody else is going to win the Oscar. Right now, if I were to call it right now, I'd probably say Leonardo DiCaprio from Killers of the Flower Moon. That would be my guess. Extremely early guess, uneducated guess, having not seen it or anything else this year. That's just preliminary. But I do think that Jonathan Majors will probably be in the conversation. It really depends on who buys the movie, though. Nobody has bought the movie yet. There were supposedly a lot of conversations happening around the movie, and nothing's materialized yet. I could see it going to like a Neon, and if Neon does it, they could push him. But if it goes to Netflix, I think Netflix will fumble the campaign. So it really depends on who gets it as to his chances.
Yeah, I got you. Now, you hit the nail on the head. When you said Neon, I was like, oh, this seems like a Neon movie, right? I mean, it seems like a Neon movie.
Well, the other thing is that the director's first movie, Hot Summer Nights, was A24. So I could also see it going to A24.
Yeah.
But A24 already has like 20 movies on their slate for this year. They already had like 10 not 10. They had several at Sundance, including the one that was the biggest movie at Sundance, Past Lives, was the one with the best buzz at Sundance. That was another one I didn't get to see. But they had like a solid amount of movies at Sundance. I think that they're going to be too busy to campaign Jonathan Majors if they get Magazine Dreams. That's a big if. I don't think they will. I think it'll end up going to somebody like Neon. But if A24 did get their hands on it, I'd be more worried about his chances than if Neon got their hands on it.
All right. Malcolm?
I was just going to go over the winners, various things here. So, for the US dramatic competition, the grand jury prize went to A.V. Rockwell for 1001. The audience award went to the Persian version, directed by Mariam Keshavs. I probably butchered that. Directing went to Sing J. Lee for Accidental Getaway Driver. The Waldo Salt Screenwriting Award went to Mariam Keshavs for the Persian version. Special Jury Award for Acting went to Leo Mahil for Mutt. The Special Jury Award for Ensemble went to the cast of Theatre Camp, directed by Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman. The Special Jury Award for Creative Vision went to the creative team of Sean's favourite movie, Magazine Dreams. The Festival Favourite Award went to Radical, directed by Christopher Zala. The US Documentary Competition, the Grand Jury Prize went to Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni Project. The Audience Award went to Beyond Utopia. Directing went to Luke Lowenstein for A Still Small Voice. The Jonathan Oppenheim Editing Award went to Daniela I. Kuroz for Going Varsity and Mariachi. The Special Jury Award for Clarity of Vision went to The Stroll. The Special Jury Award for Freedom of Expression went to Brad Press. The World Cinema Dramatic Competition went to Shader, directed by Noor Niazawi. The Director Award went to the director of Slime. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name. The Special Jury Award for Cinematography went to Lilis Soares for Miami Water. This Jury Award for Best Performance went to Rosa Marchand for When It Melts. The Creative Vision Award went to Sophia Aloe for Animalia. And the World Cinema Documentary Competition, the Grand Jury Prize went to The Eternal Memory. The Audience Award went to 20 Days of Mariupol. The Special Jury Award for Directing went to Smoke, Sauna Sister. Special Jury Award for Creative Vision went to Fantastic Machine. The Special Jury Award Verita went to Against the Tide. And then for the shorts, the short film Grand Jury Prize went to When You Left Me on That Boulevard. The US Fiction went to Rest Stop. International Fiction went to The Kidnapping of the Bride. Non-fiction went to Will You Look at Me. The Special Jury Award for International Directing, short film, Alien 0089. And then US Directing went to The Vacation. And then some other awards that have been announced.
Actually, for short, you actually missed the one that's probably most important to your viewers. Animation short film went to Flying Sailor, which is nominated for the short Oscar for animated short. So I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to be watching it soon. I believe it's available on YouTube from the New Yorker. But that one is one that obviously Gone with the Wind viewers are going to want to keep an eye on because it's been nominated for the Oscar.
Yeah.
The Variety didn't have the animated award on the
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. Did you okay? So, what are your thoughts on some of the winners? Do you have any thoughts on some of these winners, Sean?
I think the winners are pretty predictable. 1001, which won the Dramatic Grand Jury Prize, is very good. I didn't like the middle section of the movie. I loved the first third and last third. The middle section dragged a bit, but I do think it's a very good film. I think it's quite solid. Going to Mars, Nikki Giovanni Project is one of those documentaries that won more out of the subject matter than the film itself. I think that Nikki Giovanni is an amazing person, an amazing artist, amazing activist, but it's the movie itself is just kind of standard. Scrapper, I didn't like. I thought Scrapper felt like a worse After Sun. It just didn't do it for me. And Eternal Memory, I get why people like it a lot. But it's just not my style. It's a little bit too sentimental of a documentary for me. Festival favorite, Radical, very fun. Fun might not be the right word. It's a very crowd pleasing movie. You know, it's a heartwarming story of a teacher working with inner city students in Mexico. Eugenio Derbez is great in it, but the sad thing about this movie is that it's VIX Plus owns it. It is a Latino Spanish language streaming service. It's probably not going to be seen by mainstream audiences, unfortunately. It'll be mostly something that is like a niche thing.
Well, because I heard the same thing about what's his face from Coda, Eugenio Derbez. Now, do you think one of the streamers, like a Peacock or somebody like that, might pick it up because of that?
No, it is a VIX Plus original. It is a streaming service.
Well, sometimes like Netflix will pick up things that like after the fact. And
I don't think so because it is an original film for the Spanish language streaming service.
Okay, I got you.
I've talked about all of the audience awards except for the Persian version, which I thought was cute. It's a cute comedy about it's like a fish out of water comedy, kind of like My Big Fat Greek Wedding type thing. It's cute. Got bought by Sony Classics. It was produced by Stage 6 Films, which is a Sony company. So it just got bought by Sony Classics. It was going to go to a Sony subsidiary anyway. And then the next jury award and audience award went to Kokomo City, which is a very good documentary about trans sex workers. It's very personal look. Some of the production values are kind of iffy on it, but the story is just so magnificent that it really makes up for it.
Now, do you have, of all these movies that you talked about, Malcolm talked about, I talked about, do you have a lineup of where people can see some of this stuff in the next weeks, months down the road, or not at all?
So still is Apple TV Plus later this year. Theater Camp will be in theaters later this year from Searchlight. A movie called Passages got bought by Mubi. So it'll be streaming later this year. That's Ira Sachs, who's a very acclaimed director. That one got purchased. Rylane, that we talked about, is going to be on Hulu in March. Kokomo City got purchased by Magnolia Pictures and will be released later this year. Cassandra is Amazon Prime. Radical is VIX Plus. Persian version, like I said, is Sony Classics. All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt is A24, so it'll be getting a theatrical release later this year. And Starling Girl went to Bleecker Street. So that one will be getting theatrical later this year. But those are all the ones that we talked about that have distribution.
One you didn't talk about. Go ahead, Malcolm.
I was about to say, and I did a little bit of research. Apparently, 1001 is coming out March 31st.
Yeah, that one's Focus Features. I forgot about that one. That comes out March 31st.
The Indian Society, Polite Society, that is one that I know is coming out in April. Who is that from?
It's Focus Features. It's directed by Nita Manzoor, who did We Are Lady Parts on Peacock, I think is the streaming service that does that. But Polite Society is coming out in theaters from Focus. It's a fun movie. It's really fun. It's nothing horribly special. The plot's a little generic, but I had a good time watching it. So that one's coming out too. The biggest purchase of Sundance was a Fair Play with Alden Ehrenreich and Phoebe Drainer from Bridgerton. I didn't like it very much. I was in the minority on that one, though. A lot of people really loved it, but it got bought for $20 million by Netflix, which to me is way too much for that movie. But it happened. Netflix bought it, so it'll be coming out on Netflix later this year. You can watch it then.
Yeah, you gave us a lot of information, Sean. We got to process all this information. You shed a lot of light on a lot of different films from Sundance. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about your Sundance experience.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys.
Malcolm, take it away.
But that's it for this week. Probably going to take next week off because of the Super Bowl. And also there's really not much awards things to talk about. I think it was just the makeup hairstyling awards next week, and that's it. So we'll just move that to the week after. But Dan, where can people find you online? You
can find me at right down there. I like this. From thefourthrow.com, where I am a film critic. And I also write for that guy over there below me. His name is Sean at disappointmentmedia.com. And also, you can find me at Dan Skibbound on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Letterboxd. Go to my Letterboxd. And I'm going to be doing a nice series of videos along with my website about my experience in 2023 leading up to my birthday in January 11th of 2024. And so I'm going to be doing a five-part series. Also, I'm on Picture This with Dylan and Chad, part 2 of we're doing the Godfather trilogy, and we're doing 72, 74, and 90. So this month will be 74. So stay tuned for that from the Dill Pickle Network.
Yes. And Sean, we can people find you online.
Yeah, you can find me. Most of my stuff is on disappointmentmedia.com. Like Dan said, he is one of my contributors for my website. I'm also a freelancer for fandomwire.com. So I do some video essays for them, and I also do some reviews here and there. And then on social media, you can find me at Big Tuna on Film on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
And you can find me in about 15 minutes when I'm hosting Rankum straight after this. And yeah, you can find me all over the place. Also, if you haven't sent in your nominations for what you think should be nominated at the Gone with the Wind Awards, the Google form link is floating around somewhere. It's on the Take 3 pages. I've just re-uploaded it before just so people have a mind of it, and that so do that, and then at the end of February we'll probably announce the nominations for those. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, but until next time, keep watching movies.